Gaza wakes to the low hum of heavy machinery. The air is thick with dust, and the ground still trembles from months of bombardment. All around, the horizon is grey and fractured. Concrete shells, broken water tanks, tangled power lines. But there is movement again. After long weeks of silence, Gaza City is stirring back to life. In the centre of this shattered landscape, bulldozers crawl through piles of debris, their engines echoing between collapsed buildings. Men in orange vests work with shovels and bare hands, clearing the streets of what used to be homes and schools. It is a fragile scene of recovery, taking shape under the uneasy quiet of a ceasefire. The truce between Israel and Hamas has allowed Gaza's residents to step outside without fear, at least for now. Yet beneath the calm lies uncertainty. The Israeli army has pulled back from several neighbourhoods, but no one knows if the withdrawal will last. For the people here, it's enough to start sweeping dust from doorways to try rebuilding lives reduced to rubble. Amid the ruins stands Yahya al-Sarraj, the mayor of Gaza. His voice carries a blend of exhaustion and hope. He explains that since the ceasefire was declared, the municipality's first priority has been to reopen the roads. These narrow arteries once bound Gaza together from the north to the south, and now they're the key to reconnecting families. He says, "Our mission is simple. Open the streets so those who fled can return home, so people can reach shelters, hospitals, and services again." As he speaks, workers guide heavy machines through streets still littered with twisted metal. The goal is not only to clear the way, but to bring back a sense of normal movement, the idea that people can walk, travel, and breathe without fear. It is the first fragile step of a city trying to rise. But in this new silence, another force is moving. Hamas, the Islamist movement which has ruled Gaza since 2007, is now re-establishing its grip. With Israel's withdrawal from parts of the territory, Hamas's armed wings and internal security forces are returning to the streets. On Monday, buses carrying recently freed Palestinian prisoners rolled through the border into Gaza. Families cried, shouted, and waved flags. Among the crowd stood fighters from the Ezzedin al-Qassam brigades, Hamas's military arm, managing the chaos with calm authority. Cameras captured them in formation, black uniforms, green headbands, rifles slung over their shoulders. For many Palestinians, their presence signals protection. For others, it's a reminder that even in truce, the war's shadow endures. In the north, police vehicles bearing the Hamas emblem patrol the streets again. Their mission, to restore order in neighbourhoods abandoned for months. Looting, smuggling and factional crime surged after Israeli troops withdrew. Now, the group's Ministry of Interior has deployed special units to control these areas. One officer from the Hamas-led security forces, speaking with a hard tone, said, "We are deployed here to preserve the security of the population and ensure they feel safe. Criminals will be dealt with by fire. We are present across the Gaza Strip, from Beit Hanun to Rafah." The message is unmistakable. Hamas intends to govern again firmly. The show of discipline is not just for internal audiences. It's a signal to outsiders that despite US and Israeli opposition, Hamas remains the authority on the ground. As these scenes unfold in Gaza, hundreds of kilometers away, Israel begins its own grim process, identifying the bodies of hostages returned under the ceasefire deal. The photographs of Guy Illouz, a 26-year-old taken from the Nova Music Festival massacre, and Bipin Joshi, a 22-year-old Nepalese agricultural worker student kidnapped from a kibbutz, appear across Israeli media. Their names join a list of those whose lives were ended long before negotiations began. 2 more hostages were identified, though at their families' request, their names remain private. Under the terms of the ceasefire, Israel handed over 45 Palestinian bodies in return, an exchange ratio of 15 for each Israeli hostage who died in captivity. Red Cross convoys moved through the Rafah crossing, carrying remains wrapped in white sheets. In Gaza, they were greeted with both sorrow and pride as families claimed their loved ones and prepared small funerals in the ruins. This uneasy exchange marks the first phase of a broader deal, a US-backed plan to reshape Gaza's future. The framework, presented at a Cairo summit chaired by President Donald Trump, demands sweeping changes: Gaza's demilitarization, an international reconstruction fund, and the exclusion of Hamas from any governing role. In return, Hamas members willing to disarm would receive amnesty. The proposal has split opinion across the region. Israel supports the plan, arguing that Hamas's removal is the only path to lasting peace. But within Gaza, The movement's resilience challenges that logic. Even battered by war, Hamas still runs the police, courts and civil offices. For many residents, it's the only functioning authority left. As one aid worker said privately, you can't exclude the people who still hold the keys to the streets. Across Gaza, this paradox is visible in daily life. Families rebuild while militants patrol nearby. Children play near soldiers' checkpoints. Schools reopen under the same banners that once flew in wartime. Hamas, though isolated internationally, is alive domestically, shaping order in the absence of any alternative. The Palestinian Authority, meanwhile, remains sidelined. Its officials, operating from the West Bank city of Ramallah, have not set foot in Gaza for years. Efforts to reintroduce its administration face deep distrust from local residents who associate it with corruption and weakness. In this vacuum, Hamas has not only survived, it has reclaimed legitimacy. Regional analysts describe this moment as a political limbo. Hamas is weaker militarily but stronger administratively. It cannot be recognized by the outside world, yet it cannot be replaced inside Gaza. The group's leaders, many still underground, are quietly organizing a new phase, rebuilding infrastructure while consolidating control. Yahya Sinwar, the elusive Hamas leader in Gaza, has not appeared publicly in months, but according to multiple Arab diplomats, he continues to issue orders through intermediaries, shaping policies of reconstruction, aid distribution, and internal security. For his followers, his absence is symbolic, a sign of survival and strategy. While these political maneuvers play out, Gaza's civilians carry the heaviest burden. The ceasefire has not brought immediate relief. Electricity remains scarce, hospitals are overwhelmed, and water supplies are contaminated. According to local health officials, more than 67,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the war. Another 169,000 are injured, and 42,000 require permanent medical assistance or prosthetics. 90% of Gaza's population is displaced, many living in makeshift tents along the southern border. Yet amid all this suffering, there is also perseverance. Families search the rubble for anything salvageable: a photograph, a blanket, a toy. Volunteers work with local crews to clear streets, rebuild shelters, and dig out schools buried under debris. The spirit of survival, tested beyond measure, endures. International agencies warn that the ceasefire will collapse unless aid flows freely. The United Nations and the Red Cross have repeatedly demanded the opening of all border crossings, calling the situation a humanitarian emergency frozen in bureaucracy. Aid convoys loaded with flour, medicine and fuel remain parked in the desert sun, waiting for permission to cross. A spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross said recently, "A ceasefire without access means nothing. The guns are silent, but the hunger continues." Diplomatic sources describe the current reality as peace on paper. Trucks wait at Rafah, hospitals run out of anesthesia, children drink from puddles contaminated by sewage. It is a truce measured not in progress, but in pauses. President Trump's administration has positioned itself as the architect of a new Middle East order, linking the Gaza plan to broader regional diplomacy. His envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, have been working with Egypt, Turkey and Qatar to coordinate reconstruction pledges, reportedly worth $70 billion. The plan envisions a multinational coalition overseeing rebuilding, job creation and refugee return. At a recent summit, Trump described it as the peace of strength, not surrender. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan were photographed beside him, presenting the image of unity. Yet not everyone is convinced. In Tehran, officials dismissed the agreement as occupation by another name. In Beirut, Hezbollah's media channels called it a truce for one side only. The contrast is striking. In Gaza, ordinary people cling to the immediate: food, water, shelter. In regional capitals, leaders weigh influence and power. And in Washington, the administration frames the ceasefire as a victory for diplomacy, while critics call it a fragile pause between wars. Inside Israel, officials defend the withdrawal as tactical. Military analysts insist it is not the end of operations, but a strategic pause, an opportunity to regroup while negotiations unfold. The Israeli Defense Forces continue to monitor Gaza through drones and intelligence units. They warn that any Hamas rearmament will trigger immediate response. But for now, the tanks have rolled back and soldiers return to bases in the Negev desert. Meanwhile, Hamas police walk the same streets once occupied by Israeli troops. Their presence raises questions. Has Hamas really been defeated or merely survived long enough to rule again? For Gaza's civilians, the answer may not matter. What matters is who keeps the peace at the door, who distributes bread, who restores electricity. Political observers describe Hamas's evolving identity as a shift from resistance to governance, from a movement defined by rockets to one defined by rules. In neighborhoods once torn apart by war, posters of fighters now hang beside new signs reading Civil Defense, Reconstruction Committee, and Municipal Council. The message is clear: Hamas is here to stay, at least in the short term. But that permanence comes with tension. The United States and Israel maintain that any future Gaza government must exclude Hamas entirely. European diplomats, however, caution that peace built on exclusion rarely lasts. One senior official at the Cairo summit put it plainly: you cannot rebuild Gaza while pretending Hamas does not exist. Across both Israel and Palestine, the ceasefire's emotional weight is visible in daily rituals. In Jerusalem, families gather for candlelight vigils, mourning hostages who will never return. In Gaza, mourners line narrow streets for funerals of those identified only by fragments. Grief, in both directions, is the only common language. And yet, life resumes. Children play in courtyards surrounded by craters. Market stalls reopen with the first shipments of vegetables from the south. Teachers hold makeshift classes in tents. Every act of normality feels like defiance, a quiet refusal to let war define the future. The mayor of Gaza says reconstruction may take a decade. He hopes for international aid, but knows it will come slowly. Still, he speaks of persistence. We must rebuild even if the world forgets us. His words capture the spirit of a place long accustomed to rebuilding from dust. As dusk falls over Gaza, the skyline glows orange, the call to prayer drifting over the sea. For a moment, there is peace, imperfect, uncertain, but real. The machines fall silent and the air grows still. People sit on rooftops, watching the last light fade over the Mediterranean, knowing tomorrow may bring another beginning or another end. For now, Gaza breathes between wars, a fragile truce held together by exhaustion and hope. From the rubble of its streets to the halls of diplomacy, every ceasefire here is both an ending and a warning. This is Gaza rebuilding again, one ceasefire at a time.